The decades-long conflict across the Congo has displaced, folks, a record 6.9 million people. The United Nations Migration Agency calls it one of the world's largest displacement and humanitarian crises. According to the International Organization for Migration, at least 80% of the displaced people live in eastern Congo's provinces of North Kivu, South Kivu, Ituri, and Tanganyika, which have long been overrun by dozens of armed groups seeking a share of the region's gold and other resources. National security and foreign policy expert Asha Castleberry-Hernandez joins me from D.C. to discuss what's happening in the Congo. So first and foremost, part of this issue, and let's just be frank, why this has not gotten lots of attention is because, like many countries in Africa, as far as this nation is concerned, if there is no national interest, meaning first oil or some type of resource, frankly, we don't care.
Well, thank you, Roland, for having me today. And I must say, the last time we spoke, we discussed the North Korea issue involving the Trump's historic visit to the DMC. So I'm happy to see you again. And also, too, I've worked on the Congo at the Security Council during the Obama administration. Yes, unfortunately, the Congo crisis has been overlooked for quite some time, and let's be honest, because it's in the African continent, that's one reason why. And also, too, when you look at how long the conflict has been, which has been for decades, there's a sense of fatigue too, with regards from the international community, as well as within the region, that how can we honestly bring sustainable peace to the Congo? And unfortunately, it's been struggling for quite some time. And as you could see just recently with the Tutsi-led group that has been able to make inroads in North Kivu, and as a result of that, there's been a failure of the Congolese government or military, along with a regional force as well as a UN peacekeeping force that has not been able to push back or counter the Tutsi-led rebel group effectively. So you're seeing in grounds coming from them. And as a result, it's creating the humanitarian crises and deepen it more and more to where it's creating one of the world's worst displacement issue right now. So it does deserve more attention, but unfortunately, it's been this way for quite some time, and it should not be a normative in the international community.
Anthony, go to my iPad. This here is a map of Africa. We see the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It is one of the larger countries. It's there in Central Africa. And so who really has the influence, if you will, to impact this? Is there a particular African nation or leader who has the credibility to try to have an impact and stop what's going on?
Well, it's going to definitely take the international community, more specifically key regional countries that are bordering Eastern Congo, in order to effectively address this issue. Like, for instance, there's a lot of speculation or accusations right now with regards to neighboring countries like Rwanda or Uganda, indicating or accusing them of arming or supporting the rebel groups, the Tutsi-led rebel group that extends all the way back into the Rwanda crisis in 1994. So it's going to have to take forward some real authentic peace negotiations with these neighbor countries, along with the Congolese government and other significant leaders in the Security Council, to be able to effectively be just honest on what is the causation that's really helping to make the Tutsi-led government, Tutsi-led rebel groups become more equipped, more with better equipment, uniform, more support to be able to outperform the UN peacekeeping effort, the regional forces. What is causing that? And if so, if they're feeding into that issue, we need to come back to the table and address that.
When it comes to the president of the Congo, this is who he is right here. Does he actually control the country, or is it split? Anthony, go to my iPad. Does he control the country, or is it, or parts of the country being controlled by rebel factions?
Yes, and so what we've seen over the past decade, we've seen that the rebel groups have been able to capture significant critical areas within the Congo. So unfortunately, he has struggled to be able to control significant areas within his own country, and so that's why you see a UN peacekeeping force there to help prop him up or be able to recontrol those areas. And what you're seeing right now is that these rebel groups are more and more controlling more areas to where he's not being able to control those areas, especially in the eastern Congo. So it's very unfortunate that, unfortunately, with regards to the entire sovereign state, he does not necessarily have full control of the entire country.
Questions from my panel. Rebecca, you first.
Sure. Can you talk more about the role that mining of certain rare earth materials play into this, and even with Rwanda, Ugandan military groups that are being funded by the United States, by Britain, by France, and even Israel? Can you talk more about some of those connections?
Yes. So, as mentioned before, in terms of the Tutsi-led group, rebel group, there is a lot of speculation that Rwanda, Uganda is supporting the Tutsi-led group, which goes back to 1994. On 1994 genocide crisis. And then when you look at the UN peacekeeping effort, which is paid by the United Nations Security Council, the United States supports these peacekeeping efforts. This is another avenue approach for the United States, helps support the Congolese government by providing equipment or support to these peacekeepers. Unfortunately, what you're seeing right now is that the Tutsi-led rebel group is more equipped and has better equipment than the UN peacekeeping effort, along with the regional security force that works with the UN peacekeeping force. So you're seeing this split, but you're seeing an outperformance from, again, the Tutsi-led group against this. And this was definitely noted by the the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, where he has specifically mentioned the Tutsi-led group is more equipped than the UN peacekeeping effort.
How the hell is that allowed to happen? I mean, how?
Right. Right.
Well,
Go ahead.
mhm. Oh, you like for me to answer?
Yeah, Asha, go ahead. Yeah, how are the rebels better equipped?
Yes. Well, when it comes to peacekeeping efforts, or just the government itself, African militaries have always struggled in terms of being able to be more equipped in fighting in these constant armed conflicts. And then, because of they're not necessarily funded, they don't receive enough money in terms of being more robust in its military posture. Over time, that's what you see. And then at the same time, simultaneously, these security challenges just continue to exacerbate. So they're sometimes considered as combat effective because they can't keep up with the ongoing deepened security challenges that are happening. So it definitely goes back to the lack of funding, a lack of leadership, a lack of just being equipped to serve in these in these conflicts.
May I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you have a destabilized DRC, does it make it easier for different outside interests to come in and to take some of the materials, some of the resources out of the region? I'm talking about some of the specific, I think it's coltan, is the specific rare earth mineral that's being extracted.
Thank you for mentioning that point because looking at this situation, many experts have said that one of the driving factors of why this conflict is happening is because of the economic interest in terms of the rich natural resources like gold and additional resources, where these neighboring countries have an interest in being able to control. So with that being said, because the Congo, especially along the eastern province, is looked upon as being porous, it is a lot easier for external forces or groups to come in and to be able to take advantage of the destabilization or the fragility of the country, and more specifically is to target towards these markets or these natural resources. So there's definitely a big economic drive or factor here that plays into this conflict.
Who is Scott Bolton here, if I may, Roland?
Go ahead.
Who's driving the peace process? I mean, the videos show chaos. You've got these various interests and so forth and so on. I got it. But the UN is there as a peacekeeping force. Is the UN driving peace and negotiations between these various factions, whether it's power sharing or ending the chaos or ending the war against these 80% of the population that's being displaced?
Thank you for the question. Yes, so the UN has played a significant role in trying to, achieve a sustainable peace there in the Congo, but unfortunately, it has not been able to reach that goal. Going back to the CNDP in 2009, where there was this power sharing point that you just mentioned between the Tutsi led leadership along with the Congolese government, where both were combined, come together as far as a sharing power. But unfortunately, in 2012, when the Congolese government arrested one of the top Tutsi led rebel group leaders, that created a friction or a divide or a wedge between the two. And then that's when you start to see the Tutsi led representation or group just branch away from the Congolese government. So, and then it happened again. Another agreement occurred, but unfortunately, that peace still did not meet its expectations. And in fact, the Tutsi-led group says we are fighting back because we're not seeing that the Congolese government is meeting our expectations with regards to these peace agreements. So there is definitely a failure with regards to these peace agreements bringing sustainable peace subsequently, because that's exactly what they've mentioned, that it's not achieving peace within this area. So there's been just a lot of failure in terms of after meeting or after a peace agreement has been established.
Wow.
Robert?
Following up on Rebecca's question, thank you so much for joining us. We have seen that there have been massive oil deposits found both in North and Southern Kivu, as well as Tanganyika, including on one of the world's largest gorilla preserves. The foreign national organizations, including China, have attempted to extract oil from, as well as a massive lithium mine in the southeastern region of the Congo, which Australia is attempting to exploit, in addition to the cobalt, tritium that Rebecca mentioned earlier. What role does China play in providing international leadership in peacekeeping in these areas? Because it seems that the regional partners, which normally would have a security interest there, seem to have basically washed their hands of the situation. Kenya, which is directly next to Uganda, they're proposed sending peacekeepers all the way to Haiti, as opposed to sending peacekeepers to Congo to deal with those issues right on their doorstep. But what role does China and other international organizations outside of the NATO, the UN, the US, what role are they playing in attempting to achieve peace?
Yes, thank you for the question. So China is unfortunately all over the continent when it comes to matters that relate to peace, security, economics, infrastructure developments like the Belt and Road Initiative. So what you're seeing in terms of China is they play a role with the UN where they fund the UN in terms of peacekeeping. They even are like one of the only P5 permanent representatives that have peacekeepers or deploy peacekeepers to these type of peacekeeping missions in Africa. So there's some sort of boots on the ground representation with regards to China. Then also you have this unilat or bilat effort that China is doing, where they work closely with these countries as far as saying, hey, we will work closely with you in terms of security, in terms of building the infrastructure development, that you always needed for more than 90 or 100 years. But in exchange, China always has an interest in terms of economics, especially when it comes to oil. Now, in terms of oil, yes, China has a strategic interest because it has to accommodate over 1.3 billion people that demands a high consumption of energy needed there. So China definitely has a strategic interest when it comes to this oil industry within the Congo.
And just rolling real quick, a follow-up. We've seen other African nations that have been dealing with similar issues partition. We've seen North and Southern Sudan partition. There's a proposal to partition Libya directly, bilaterally, directly down the center. Has there been any conceptualization of redrawing lines to potentially stop this ethnic violence?
With regards to this, as far as partition, I think that is a potential, especially if you start to see where the country is struggling to be able to control the entire state. So, just like what you said, as far as Sudan, I used to actually work on that issue in at the United Nations, where we successfully were able to establish South Sudan compared to Sudan, and that helped uh, at that point bring more peace between the two countries. But there is definitely a potential here with regards to the Congo, especially when you see there's a huge difference in terms of experiences looking at the Eastern Congo versus Western Congo. But once again, in order to do that, we have to bring in those neighboring countries and the rest of the international community to come up to a consensus on, is that realistic? Would that actually bring peace with regards to the DRC?
Final question I would like for you to answer, and this is for somebody who's watching right now who's saying, look, man, I don't care. It's other stuff that we could be talking about. It's stuff happening in the United States. A lot of these people who are very isolationist, who say, I don't care about what's happening in Africa. I don't care about what's happening in the Caribbean. Why should this matter to African Americans?
Yes. Thank you for the the question. Well, what's interesting is that I was really happy to participate in this interview, because just yesterday, Vice President Harris initiated her presidential advisory board, well, President Biden's advisory board for African affairs. So they're spending a lot of time, money in terms of how to help bring peace and security effectively in the continent. And that requires Americans being involved, utilizing our taxpayer money to help bring peace and security there. Why is that so important? Well, when you look at places like the DRC, or even right now in Israel involving Gaza, when you have destabilization, you have groups like terrorist groups, for instance, whether it's Hamas, ISIS, et cetera, especially ISIS in southern Africa. Those type of terrorist groups breed there, and once they have the opportunity to build on strongholds and emerge, that becomes not only a threat to that specific state, the region, but also to the United States. So helping to develop Africa. It's not just involved with, okay, we have to be able to push back on China with regards to strategic competition, but it helps fight back terrorism. And that was clearly stated by the vice president when she actually pursued her trips there. She saw that it's very important that we stay engaged with Africa and help develop it, because it fights back against terrorism.
And to your point, this is the press release, excuse me, the White House sent out. Go to my iPad, please. Lays out the inaugural members of the President's Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement in the United States. There are 12 members of folks in here. So the members for 2023-25, you see them here, including Rosalind Brewer, who recently stepped down as the CEO of Walgreens, actress Viola Davis, Helene Gale of Georgia, Patrick Gaspard, former legislative director under Obama. And so you see all the names right here. Asha, Castleberry-Hernandez, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, giving us this important perspective that it will not get talked about on mainstream media.
Thank you so much, Roland.
Thanks so much. Look forward to having you back.